Well, good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. This is First Alert Plus. Meteorologist Nicholas Snider here, and we have lots to talk about here, so let's get right into it. Of course, big events happening this weekend down in Pike County, Kentucky. Hillbilly Days going on, and that's what we're watching as we head into much of the weekend. We're also talking about, of course, the next chances of rain. There will be some more chances of rain that are headed our way coming Friday and Saturday and Thursday, unfortunately. So you will need the umbrella for portions of Hillbilly Days here. And then a warm and rainy pattern looking to set on in for much of April here, too. So we're tracking some warmer conditions, but also some rainier conditions heading into that time frame of late April and, believe it or not, early May. By the way, 13th episode of First Alert Plus, 13 weeks in. Can you believe that? And in a couple weeks, we're going to have some changes to our set here. We're really excited about that. Let's get right into what we're talking about, though. Of course, we got to track a little bit of energy that will be trying to make its way on through. We're going to pause this right here, and I want to show you what we're talking about for our first chance of rain coming on Thursday evening. That little spoke of energy you see right there, that's a source of lift for some moisture. We're going to get some humid air coming in for Thursday. That humid air is going to lift up on that little circled piece of energy right there to create some storms. Now, there's a bit of a difference here between the models. This right here is the American model that I'm showing you. We're going to look at the European model coming up in just a bit. But you'll see that energy kind of there. It's lifting more of that moisture. We'll see maybe a round of storms or two Thursday evening. Things will fade out, though, Thursday night as that energy kind of goes away. Let's clear that circle off so I can more clearly show you what's going on for Friday. And in fact, what we got Friday is actually the perfect spot here. So we'll leave that circle on here. That's another area we want to watch here for the potential of some more rain and storms that could come on in and cause some disruptions for your Friday. And we're going to have to watch that general area. And then there's another general area I also want us to watch. I do want to highlight a few things here, and I'm trying to get the correct tool, so bear with me on here while I do that, because it'll really highlight exactly what we're trying to see here and what we're trying to get at with this situation here. So bear with me while I do that, and then we'll kind of show you what I'm seeing on this particular product. So here we go. Here's that next little piece of energy. This little trough, we like to call these surface troughs here, or rather upper air troughs. This is what we're looking at, that upper air level, about, let's say, 1,800 feet above the Earth's surface. That's kind of what we're looking at here. There's another little trough that we want to focus on too, and that's coming out of Canada. It's going to help us cool down just a little bit. And again, we'll clear off this little circle here. Watch this dive down and kind of come together. These two pieces of energy right here. This one right here, this one right here. They kind of merge together just like that. That'll help this area of low pressure kind of gain a little strength here, and that will provide us with a little bit more of that rain come Saturday morning. Now let's go to the European model. It's showing kind of the same essential things that we've been looking at here. But it's showing it in some minor differences here. Notice, for instance, that Thursday piece of energy that we've been looking at right here is a little weaker, so that storm threat on the European model is likely going to be, at least on Thursday, a little bit more isolated. I do ultimately agree with the European model. I think that storm threat on Thursday is going to be isolated, and it's going to be over western locations. Notice where that energy is kind of centered up here near Cincinnati. That means energy is going to form these storms kind of downwind of that. So you're talking the far western portions of our area out toward Portsmouth, West Liberty, Kentucky, out toward Moorhead, Kentucky, out toward Vanceburg, places like that have the best chance of seeing the majority of that energy kind of firing up some of those storms. Again, that's what the European model says. I'm agreeing with that European model kind of picture right there. Let's fast forward to Friday here, and again, we're watching the other piece of energy come on through, and that's this right back here. Let's highlight that for you. Right back here towards St. Louis. Watch it come on in for Friday. Develop a little bit more of this activity overhead. more widespread. Timing of this, meanwhile, would be, again, Friday afternoon. I think Friday morning, for the most part, we should be dry. That's according to the European model. And again, I'm agreeing with what the European model has been really saying here. And then we got to watch that northern stream of energy coming out of the Arctic. Again, right on here, we're talking about that right there and this right here kind of merging together to create that development of a stronger area of low pressure as we head into the day on Saturday. These two pieces of energy. Let's get rid of the markings on the map and kind of set the map in motion here. Watch that kind of gain strength. And again, we'll see some rain developing in this general area right here come Saturday morning, downwind of that next piece of energy coming down from the Arctic. So we're watching some wetter conditions for sure that will be heading on into the weekend. And we'll kind of show you how this all plays out here on our surface features, that area of low pressure that we always watch here. Again, that low kind of dives out of the Great Plains come Friday. It pulls in that moisture from the Gulf. That moisture is going to be really essential for any storms to form. Remember, if you don't have moisture, you're not going to get any sort of rain. You're not going to get any sort of storms. So we're going to garner some of that moisture overhead. It's going to be lifted. We produce more rain and storms. Not necessarily so much on Thursday as opposed to Friday, but certainly Thursday, Friday, and Saturday will all have the potential of seeing some rain and storms that will work on in. And it's beneficial rain. The good news is we're not expected to see any severe weather. And why is that? Well, let's go to the computer. We'll find out why here. It's really important to kind of dive into this data, and it'll really help us kind of look at exactly what we need to see here for these rain areas and for these storm areas going into the weekend. So let's go to our favorite models, the American model and the European model, because this is still a little bit far out for us to go to some of the more high-resolution models. So let's talk about the energy for thunderstorms. I want you to notice the lack of really anything too strong here. You want to look for these blues with these levels that are above 1,000. See here down on the scale, right there. You want to look for those blues above 1,000. We're not seeing much of any of that here. In fact, we're seeing very low levels of thunderstorm energy, which is instability plus moisture on Thursday. And again, the energy to lift that is not even going to be that strong. So Thursday, looking at some isolated activity. Skipping ahead to Friday, again, not a whole lot of energy to work with in our atmosphere. There's a lot of moisture in the sky. It's kind of clogging up the atmosphere and keeping us from seeing anything too strong. Going ahead to Friday, well, we already looked at Friday. This is Saturday. Notice, again, this would be a Saturday afternoon. The front's through. Most of the energy now down here. Now, Pikeville could see some storms kind of continue into the afternoon. I think for the most part, though, a lot of us should be dry. That's the American model. Again, let's go to the European model right here. Now, the European model is a bit more rambunctious with its energy. We got a few spots of over 1,000, but again, nothing too jumping off the page here. So, again, nothing too bad, at least showing up here. Skipping ahead to Friday, again, not a whole lot to work with. There's a lot of moisture in the air. When there's moisture high up in the sky as opposed to just near the Earth's surface, that moisture is going to allow the air to cool a lot less rapidly. Moist air cools less rapidly, than dry air because there's heat exchange between the environment and the air itself. So with the air cooling less rapidly, your air is going to be a bit more stable. And so with stabler air, you get less thunderstorm energy to work with. That's what we're seeing both on the American and the European model here. But again, the European model a bit more rambunctious on its energy. Saturday not showing a whole lot. Now, of course, down here in Alabama, Georgia, there's a lot of energy to work with. But in our region, not a whole lot of energy to work with. So what does this translate to? Again, let's go back to our favorite tools here. This is, of course, called a atmospheric sounding, or a SKU-T. I love to show this in First Alert Plus because this gives us a very technical look at the atmosphere. Let's go over this again. I know this looks very complicated. Red line, of course, is temperature. The green line is our measure of moisture called the dew point. And again, up is how high you are in the atmosphere. The further up you go in this graph, the further higher you go in the atmosphere. This dashed line is if air was risen to what's called the LCL, the lifted condensation level, where the air becomes saturated and becomes a cloud. And basically, the more space between this dashed line you have and this red line, the more energy you have to work with. Not a whole lot. You would see maybe this dashed line going all the way up here if you're talking about severe weather. So not a whole lot of severe weather to talk about on Thursday. In fact, no severe weather to talk about on Thursday. Friday, kind of same deal. The bullseye looks to be in Pikeville, but even then, it still doesn't look all that impressive here. And another thing I want to show you too, this plot of wind, by the way, before we kind of talk more about the instability. It's very short. When these are longer, when you see these stretch out to about here, that's where you could also expect severe weather. We're not seeing that in this case either. Skipping ahead to Saturday, kind of same deal here. Not a whole lot to work with. Again, the bullseye kind of down to the south at this point where the front is. Look how little instability we have to work with there. Moral of the story is no severe weather is expected from this. Think back to what we saw yesterday, where we saw just those rain showers, nuisance here or there, kind of popping up, fading away. You'll need those umbrellas for sure, but other than that, as long as you have the umbrellas, you should be A-OK for anything you want to do on a Friday evening, which is, again, very good news. That's the kind of news we really want to hear because we don't want any more hail or anything like that like we saw a couple weeks ago impacting a lot of the area. So let's go back to the weather graphics. We'll give you kind of a rundown of how much rain we can expect over the area. And we could be seeing a couple of areas of rain that could reach on in here. So let's go back to the weather graphics again. We'll set the maps in motion here. This is the American model. We've been talking about the differences. Notice how the American model is a bit more rambunctious, like I said earlier, with that energy for Thursday. That's why we're seeing a bit more widespread rain on Thursday on this model as opposed to the other model, which is the European model. So let's continue to set this in motion here going forward. Still some rain Thursday night into Friday. That will continue. Here's the European model. Notice again, we're seeing that activity a little bit less on Thursday in comparison to the American model. And notice where most of that activity is over the western locations, out toward Moorhead, out toward Portsmouth, out toward West Liberty, down toward Prestonsburg. Not necessarily in the river cities, not necessarily toward the Pikeville area, although there is a little green in Pikeville. I do ultimately think a higher resolution model will show the rest of the region staying dry. Notice the drying out trend by Friday morning, and then more rain comes in by Friday afternoon. American model a little bit higher on precipitation totals, 1.5 inches up toward the Pikeville area, down in the coal fields from Corridor G and Pikeville all the way up to the Logan area. Going to the European model, a little bit less, but still has that bullseye from Pikeville to Logan. None of this will cause flooding. That's the important thing to note. None of this will cause flooding. No hail, no gusty wind or anything like that, so no severe weather is expected from this. I really, really want to stress that. We've had a lot to deal with that, at least over the last couple of weeks, but we're not going to see anything like that. That's the good news. But for Hillbilly Days, you're going to need those umbrellas, and we'll talk about Hillbilly Days a little bit more in depth in just a second. In fact, we can go to that right now. I want to show you kind of the schedule of events here to see what exactly they're doing here. They're doing a whole lot of stuff. They kick off actually Thursday, and Thursday may actually be the pick day to go to this because Thursday Pikeville should be dry. Friday, on the other hand, Saturday, on the other hand, depends on when you go Saturday, but definitely Friday you could run into some issues. So let's go back to the computer. We'll give you an idea here. They're doing some big little brawlers on Thursday. Beard and mustache contest on Friday. Now this, you might be a little soggy here for that. Again, a lot of the Friday events here could be in jeopardy of getting rained on here, but it's not going to be any severe weather, so they should be able to go on. Hillbilly Car Show, yeah, that looks like you're going to see a little bit of rain, especially in the morning. Dwight Yoakam with the Mavericks, Saturday, April 26th. It looks like, yeah, that could be a little wet as well. Really depends on, again, the timing of your Saturday. If you're going Saturday afternoon, you should be A-OK. But, again, Saturday morning could still get rain. Going back to the weather graphics here, let's give you an idea again of what exactly we're looking at. In fact, we'll zoom on into some of these locations here. Pikeville, again, the American model, showing a little bit of this. Now Thursday, 3 p.m., I think this is a little overdone in terms of the rain. You'll notice that big dollop of green over Pikeville. And you have to keep in mind, too, models' resolutions degrade as you go further and further out. So this American model has a spacing of 25 kilometers. So it's looking at 1 cube of the atmosphere, 25 kilometers wide. At the end of the day, it's not going to be able to see this fine little details. So I think we're going to be fairly dry, in spite of what the American model is saying here in Pikeville on Thursday. Friday, on the other hand, that's where you're going to run into some issues. You're going to see that rain kind of off and on through the day. Saturday, by noon, things will start to dry out, and then by Saturday night, that's when things, for the most part, will dry out. Now let's go to the European model. This is a bit more of a finer resolution, 9-kilometer grid spacing, so it's still not the best grid spacing, but it gives you a better idea, at least compared to what the American model is saying. I do, again, think we're going to be dry Thursday. Friday, on the other hand, especially in the evening, that's where you could run into some issues. Saturday morning looks like we have rain, but notice the rain clearing out by Saturday afternoon. Moral of the story is, hillbilly days. You're looking better Saturday afternoon, and you're looking better on Thursday. Friday is where you could run into some issues. So let's get you that forecast. We're going to be warm. There's at least that. But rain and a few storms will be a possibility on Friday night. 68 degrees in Pikeville, southwest wind 0 to 5 miles an hour. We're going to see those rain areas and those stormy areas. And yes, you're going to need those umbrellas if you're down there. But again, still warm. Want to hammer that point home. Let's go to Saturday. 72 degrees, not too bad. Again, we're staying warm over the area. That's the important thing. We are staying warm. Seeing those rainy conditions in the morning, the sun does return for the afternoon, and it's warm and comfortable. Now, of course, we're used to 80s by now, so some of us may even need a hoodie for that type of weather, believe it or not. I know it's not even May yet, but we're used to 80s by now because spring has been overall very, very warm over the area. So some of you may need hoodies, some of you not. The point is, though, Saturday afternoon's the time to go if you want to do that. Sunday, I do believe it's over, but if you do want to get out and about and enjoy Pikeville on Sunday, 71 degrees, lots of sunshine, we're comfortable and dry, so Sunday does not look too bad. That's what we got for Hillbilly Days on the docket here for you. Now, of course, we got to take a look at the overall pattern for April. I promised you a warm and rainy pattern. Let's dive deep into this right now. I want you to notice a couple of things here. Look where all the cold air is. Up where it should be, in the Arctic. We're not seeing any of that cold air. In fact, much of the continental United States is remaining warm. Definitely a welcome sign here. We haven't seen a pattern like this in a while. Alaska seeing the cold air. We're seeing that cold air up in the North Atlantic, up in the Arctic Ocean. Meanwhile, the warmer conditions being dealt with in the United States right here. Here's where all the cold air is. Let's clear off this map here, set the map in motion. I want you to notice this pattern doesn't really change. In fact, we even get warmer. More of this cold air continues to be bottled up in the North Atlantic, in Alaska, in the Arctic, where it belongs this time of year. We continue to get warmer. Boy, I know a lot of people are loving that sight. We're not going to get below 70 degrees in the next 7 days, at least for the highs. That's going to feel really, really nice. We got some very, very comfortable temperatures on the way, and I know a lot of us are going to love it. Now, there are a few things I want you to notice here on this map. There are a few kinks that we got to keep an eye on. For instance, this one right here, this one right here, this one right here. It's an overall wavy pattern, and when you get these wavy patterns, you get the development of more potential rain and storms that could be tracking on through. And so it is going to be a rainier pattern, but at least we're going to have at least a few dry days here or there and those warmer conditions. Again, not getting below 70 degrees in the next 7 days for your highs. A welcome, welcome sight for a lot of us around the region. Closer look at the continental United States. Again, just watch this orange just push itself on up into much of the lower 48. And it's just going to feel very lovely over the entire country going over the next 7 to 10 days. It's a welcome sight for a lot of us. We got to watch these kinks, though. Again, right there, right back here. That's what we're keeping a close eye on. Let's talk temperatures. Again, we're very, very warm. You notice those orange and yellows pushing on through. 73 by next Monday. Highs should stay above 70 degrees. Same thing on the European model, showing very, very nice and comfortable conditions over much of the region. And the Climate Prediction Center, 6 to 10 day outlook showing very, very good chances of above average temperatures over much of the eastern United States. It's a welcome sight for a lot of us, I'm sure. Precipitation chances, they're above normal, at least for our region, just a tad of a chance above normal. Further to the west, out in Oklahoma, Texas, much of the Great Plains, they're getting some beneficial rains, it looks like. So they will definitely take that. But for us, it's a relatively wet but very warm pattern that is setting up for much of the end of April and, believe it or not, again, the beginning of May, coming up in a couple weeks. This is First Alert Plus. We air every Tuesday, 6:45 p.m. on all of WSAZ's digital platforms, including Facebook, including YouTube, the Roku app, the weather app, the news app, anything you want to do, we are on there. Give you an in-depth look and a technical look, too, about any weather that's coming our way, and we give you the first alert to anything you need to know that could be impactful headed your way. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to subscribe and like. And, of course, if you're watching on Facebook, like this and share this. Keep the show up. And, again, couple weeks, new setup coming. It's going to be very, very nice. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you all are. In the meantime, have a great Tuesday, everybody.